Welcome to Be Provided Conservation Radio, sharing stories and information about the environment, wildlife, and the people who are dedicating their lives to protect the world for future generations. These inspirational stories will take you from the Santa Cruz Mountains to remote areas of Africa.
Hello and welcome back to Be Provided Conservation Radio. I'm Marcia Civic, your host today. We are continuing our conversation with Ashleigh Lutz-Nelson, the Assistant Curator of Carnivores at the San Francisco Zoo. When we last left off in part 1 last week, Rodney Jackson of the Snow Leopard Conservancy was observing pregnant Dawa, the mother snow leopard, doing the infamous snow leopard helicopter jump. And then on June 7th in 2018, Dawa gave birth to 2 healthy snow leopard cubs, and she is proving to be an excellent mother. So we begin part 2 of this conversation with Ashleigh talking about the cubs a little bit more. Enjoy.
So it was really special. And so when the cubs were born, Susie eventually came out and started taking photographs. So we've been documenting their growth to, put this book together. But the cubs actually, we're talking about challenges a little bit. Similar to our Malayan tiger cubs, they required veterinary socialization. And what that means is the best gold standard for modern zoos is that their cubs are raised by their natural mom, because of course they're part of a conservation breeding program. We want them to learn all those skills, mannerisms that it takes to be a tiger or snow leopard from their mother.
Right.
And so that they're not socially awkward when they get older and we're introducing them to another animal for breeding, and so that they know how to be a tiger or snow leopard. But sometimes, they can require supplemental care. Like if it's a singleton cub, like with cheetahs, sometimes they will reject them. The best standard for us is to provide supplemental care. If we can, leave the cubs with their mom, and then provide like milk if she doesn't have enough milk, provide supplemental feedings, like train them to come over to a bottle. Or if it's, veterinary care, like with our tiger cub and our snow leopard cubs, they required actually daily handling and care. They're doing really well, and they've been an absolute blast. And one of the cutest things was watching them when we started letting them out into the habitat with her. And, they're about 2 months old and started coming out. And then every now and again, she was very vigilant, just even though she's so young, just perfect, would come out and just check things out first. And then every now and again, she'd go over and she'd just tag one. And then she'd do that cool helicopter move where she'd go in the air.
Yeah, is that a snow leopard thing?
It is. They are silly cats.
They are.
They are goofy cats. Of all the cat species I worked with, they are the quirkiest, the silliest. They're just little goofballs. Yeah. And I'll never forget them looking at her and they're like, wow.
I want to do that.
I want to be like you someday, Mom. And then afterwards they were like trying to imitate her. It was like the most darling thing. It's just, watching them grow and the adoration that the mother has for them. I mentioned that to you earlier. I mean, seeing a mother cat's love for her kittens or cubs has been like one of the most extraordinary things I've ever experienced.
Yeah. And you've seen that in more than the snow leopards, right?
And with the tigers and, it's just having that, being able to watch the cubs grow and develop and her teach them the ways of the world, even in a zoo setting, it's all the same. They definitely teach them how to eat. They're when they're ready for them to eat rabbit, they share that with them, and just how just watching, they would always give their food right to their cubs, and even when they were hungry, just make sure they eat first, just like a human mother. They would they're so devoted. I've seen it now with the apes as well, and it's, with the apes you expect it, but with the cats, they're so stoic and strong, and they have, this big image as a predator, but they are.
And kind of solo in a way, and we were talking about that earlier, but you're kind of finding out that they're not always solo, some of them.
So typically the mother does everything. Typically the moms do everything. The only true social cats are lions and male cheetahs. Male cheetahs stick together. The brothers are coalitions, and then lions are social. And when a mom has young, the cubs are social until everybody disperses and then finds their own territory once they're fully sexually mature. So in the zoo setting, we mimic that, or we, follow that as well. So with the breeding programs, we introduce very carefully, because typically males and females are only going to come together for breeding and then part ways. And so we always go with that standard of being very cautious and careful, and making sure that the behavior is always guiding it, and it's always their choice. Everything's always their choice. Yeah. And so when we do those introductions, sometimes the cats will show us that they are more inclined to stay together even after breeding, like they're calm or they're okay, or showing even like affiliative behavior toward each other.
Like the tigers we saw.
So our two Sumatran tigers here, Larry and Leanne, they're both very social. So we allow them to be together all the time. And so we let their behavior. So in the wild, how it works is you have the females with their territory. Snow leopards or tigers have their own territory. And then they have to rely on everything within that territory for their resources. So people, when you think about like a tiger's territory is going to be about the size of the city of San Francisco.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
One like tigers.
Yeah.
And then if you think about, the male is going to, go through 2 to 4 females' territories and be dominant. And go through and check on things. How are things going here? Is she an estrus? No, I'm going to keep going. And they leave, love notes to each other through scent marking and through scratches. And, so they're going through the different territories. So here, if they do want to be together, they can. And so we had our male and female snow leopard together until she got pregnant. And then she started showing signs that she was ready to do this on her own. So we crate trained him and moved him up to our feline conservation center up here to neighbor next to our older female Kelly, who's really social. And so, Mom, she's just done everything on her own, and it's just extraordinary to see. I mean, they truly are just my hero. So with Snow Leopard Conservancy, this all led at, and then we came up with the idea. So I started working with an organization locally called International Veterinary Outreach.
Oh, okay.
And it's it's an organization that focuses on improving animal welfare, sustainability, and public health issues in underserved communities. So it's a local San Francisco, and there's so much overlap with conservation, right? I mean, that's what the conservation organizations do. So my role as conservation coordinator has been exploring those partnerships with the conservation groups I already work with, and here at the zoo to see if there's any need for veterinary services. So think about vaccinations for wild dog populations, or Ethiopian wolves. You have neighboring feral dogs that could pose a big risk to the endangered populations. So vaccination clinics, stuff like that. So IVO had a couple of projects, one being in Covelo, the Native American community in Mendocino, on vaccination clinics and spay neuters, and then also in the Philippines with improving horse welfare in an area that is heavily tourist that takes horses up to this volcano. And so working with the veterinary school there and improving capacity for improving welfare. So I started reaching out, and so Rodney was actually the one. Rodney Jackson said, I have a need in Nepal to work with the yak herders on improving their health and husbandry so that it prevents disease transmission between the people and the livestock and, of course, the snow leopards. So improving animal welfare, and then also working with them on predator proofing their corrals better so that those snow leopards cannot come in and take an easy meal. And then, thus reducing retaliatory killings, because of course when they come in and could take out like 50 important. Goats or sheep or yak.
Yeah, because they'll just kill whatever moves if they're in that pen or whatever.
They will. Right? So it's they've had that, and then that's when they go out and target. And you can't blame them when you don't know when your next meal is, or your livelihood's taken away, or your family's killed.
I mean,
because
that's currency.
You live next to these big predators. You can't blame them. I mean, look at how we are with mountain lions here. We love that they're here, but if they come in your backyard, people start getting real nervous.
Kill your chickens and stuff.
People start getting really nervous. So it's, conservation, it's, 30, 40 years ago, it was all about ecology and understanding the biology. And it still is that. You have to understand those things and have measures, but it's all about community conservation. Now it's coexistence, right? It's finding and problem solving those solutions so that these animals have a chance, because they're so important in the ecosystem. So snow leopards being at the top of the food chain there, they regulate the antelope populations, and tigers, and where they live, they regulate the antelope populations so they don't get all out of sorts and disrupt the vegetation and everything underneath. As you know, it's a trickle down effect.
It all comes
all
together.
Connected. You take one piece out of that puzzle and everything is disrupted. And it's majorly resource intense to try to redo that. Once you, like Mexican gray wolves, now we've seen that this recovery program is going on 30 years old now, and it's
really?
It's growing, but it takes
time.
with a lot of challenges.
It's like the Yellowstone with the wolves there.
Exactly. And with the Mexican gray wolves, you have, active lawsuits from Arizona and New Mexico toward the federal government on reintroductions. Like you have, they don't want the predators back, even though there are ways to protect, So it's the same, whether it's here in the United States or if it's in Africa or in Asia, we're all facing the same challenges.
Yeah.
The common thread is, finding coexistent solutions.
Yeah,
and
that's the key.
So this project, just got approved, and we are very excited to get started on it. It'll be a really great project for our zoo. We did start a field project in Madagascar several years ago, working on a program to provide an alternate food source for the Malagasy people instead of eating lemurs, bushmeat. So instead of eating the wildlife, focusing on providing chickens for them and them raising chickens for food. But the chickens, there were diseases that were coming through, so they created vaccines that didn't have to be refrigerated that could be used for the chickens.
Smart.
So it's we call this a One Health approach when you're looking at improving public health as well as
the environmental health,
and sustainability. So we call that a One Health approach.
That's great.
So with the Snow Leopard project, it's going to be a partnership between IVO, International Vet Outreach, San Francisco Zoological Society, as well as Snow Leopard Conservancy.
Oh, that's wonderful! Yeah, Congratulations!
Thank you. So I'll be really excited. So that's another part. That's going to be another part of my role, in addition to juggling the.
Are you going to go over
things.
there? Travel with Rodney?
Yeah. We'll have to see what makes the most sense in terms of the team going over. And we're going to be looking at that. We're just in the beginning stages. He's just called today, actually.
I know, we've been chatting.
Yeah, so it's very exciting, and it's really good. It's so good for all of us and the zoo, and to show the community that we are a leader in conservation. Right. And we also participate in other conservation projects, like this other project we did. It was it's called Conservation Fit, and we put sand down and trained the snow leopards to walk through the sand, and then would secure them away, call them away, and then go out. And we were measuring their footprints because they're creating an algorithm to identify individuals based on their footprints in the wild.
Oh, interesting.
So they've done this with cheetahs, serval, I think, and then now snow leopards, and they're testing it now in the field.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So we're doing all sorts of studies like that, and also another project we're involved with is called the Preston project, or it's do you know what a preston is?
No.
So it's a friendly greeting that tigers and snow leopards do. It's also called a chuff.
Oh, okay.
And it's quite possibly my favorite sound in the whole world. But
is that when they kind of lift their head, or
it
just
is.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of a purr, because tigers can't purr because they roar. But it sounds like.
Oh.
And
and they kind of tilt their head and like, hey.
And moms do it to cubs do it to mom, males, females, when they're receptive to each other, we'll do it to them, and sometimes they do it back and forth with us.
Oh,
and it's just the best.
So they're very they can be distinctive of
and they definitely judge you if you're new and you don't have it down. They're like, you sound weird, but it's cute because they have an individual one, and I can hear that and understand who it is, or I hear an animal
that's
call.
Great.
So we worked on this project called the Preston Project, which is identifying tigers based on their individual vocals, which we know anecdotally is true, because I can hear a cat in the house and know who it is based on their call, just like they can hear us and know who it is. That's what I was saying before, like when you don't speak the same language, you know when you speak the same language, because you pick up on vocalizations and mannerisms and tones and
like your laugh perked up
exactly different things like that. So we participated in this project, and what they're doing is they're figuring out whether they can identify a tiger, because of course camera traps work really well. But this you can actually put higher up in a tree, and it will record at a wider range. So it helps over a bigger area. So you don't have to have the animal go directly past the camera for it to snap a photo and then identify the animal.
Oh, nice.
Be able to identify the cat.
Nice.
Based on the vocal.
So good microphone and a good camera attached to it.
So that might be something that you might be interested in.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I want to do that.
So they're testing it currently right now in the field. So those are just other ways, but we do all sorts of different genomic research, and like with the Palace Cat program, the SSP, we're working on a big husbandry study to figure out the best practices to improve animal welfare and reproductive success. So there's all sorts of fun stuff going on. And I love that I am able to incorporate all those different things. And it's a lot of fun.
I bet. I can tell you're happy and passionate, and you could talk forever about this, I think. And I could listen and we're doing good. I think I could listen forever too. So, and I just wanted to mention, you were talking about some of the projects when we were talking earlier, you mentioned like showing, was it the gorillas or the apes, the pictures to see if they could mate with each other. You would actually show them pictures of and get reactions from them.
Because it's very
so that's interesting way to know they're going to be compatible somewhat.
Exactly. I mean, when I was at Busch Gardens, I had the opportunity to work with the apes there as well, the gorillas, the chimpanzees, and for a longer stint, the orangutans. And we brought in orangutans all the way from Auckland, New Zealand, that were to be part of the species survival program because orangutans in the wild, they're facing similar to tigers. So there was a zoo in Auckland Zoo actually, and so they were. We brought in 3 orangutans from Auckland Zoo to be part of that species survival program. So they were new genetics within the population, and so to increase the genetic diversity. So it's a major process thinking about bringing in orangs all the way from Auckland, all the way to Florida, so, and the
stress and travel for them.
Yeah, so training to be comfortable going into a crate and duration in a crate. Of course, you can't fully train that entire experience, but getting them comfortable with being in a crate for a time period, and then transferring, and then adjusting to a new facility and new caretakers, and it's a big ordeal for a cat or an ape. So the species survival plans are always looking for ways, like through research, to better determine, how these animals might be compatible beforehand, or if they might be compatible. Yeah. So like with more scent-oriented animals, like the cats, we can exchange different scents. Yeah. There's a really cool study going on with cheetahs right now with instead of sending male cheetahs and seeing if the female's receptive to them, because they can be quite selective. Yeah. Female cheetahs can be quite selective. There's a really cool study that Regina Mazzotti, I think her last name is pronounced, but she's based at the Endangered Wolf Center. But she's focusing on this study transferring urine and seeing if the females are as receptive to just the urine. And then that way you wouldn't even have to bother transferring the animal.
And take that risk.
And take that risk, because it's just a long, it's a big process. Yeah. So
that's so cool.
So if it can help, so like with the apes, we've joked, there's like a Bumble app, where you look and say swipe right,
swipe left.
Like, oh, he's cute. Yeah. Okay. But we can also do sense as well, but we look at personality, like with the apes, look at personality a lot, and matching up, it's not just, if it's a rang, they might be solitary, but in a gorilla troop, you're looking at all the different, other animals, other apes' personalities. So there's a lot that goes into it that, I don't think a lot of people realize.
No, they don't think
that goes into saving a species. There's a lot that goes into all of it. So it's been a really big learning experience for me, and most of the pairs have been successful. Sometimes with the apes, like with the orangutans, it hasn't always matched up. It took a long time for us to find a mate for one of our females at Busch Gardens that was appropriate, that she felt comfortable with. And eventually it was a younger male from Auckland. It wasn't the older male, it was the younger male.
Going for a young guy.
And that happened with our gorillas as well. We brought in the 30-year-old male for her, for a 30-year-old gorilla, and she wanted a son who was 11.
Oh my gosh.
So which is, it's hilarious. But with our female orang, I just went back to see them in January, and going over to see her and her introducing her baby, it was just a very special moment. It was about 10 years in the making of her getting comfortable with a male. So it was just such a rewarding moment for me to see her doing so well as a mother, and with her mate too. So typically, female orangs do it all by themselves as well. Okay. And but she's allowing that young male to be part of the rearing. And so, going back to what you were saying before, we are seeing, based on personality, some male cats even spending more time with mother and cubs if she will allow it. Yeah. There was a very
she's the determining factor.
She's the determining factor. There was a very famous female in India. I went to India last November. It was a dream to go and see the tigers there.
Oh, I bet.
And similar to Malaysia, it was a very different kind of type. Conservation in Malaysia is different than than conservation in India. And it was interesting seeing the different groups work because it was very different. Right. But in India, there was a very famous female that when I was, we were talking about, growing up, and I guess my affinity for, the wildlife was looking at like National Geographics when I was a kid and reading about Jane Goodall and the chimpanzees. And there's a famous story that I read when I was a kid, maybe like 10 years old. It was like sometime in the 90s, early 90s. And it was on a famous female called Mauchly in Ranthambore National Park in India. And she was known as the queen of all tigers. And she was the queen because she was very dominant. Her territory was over this marsh, and she was also known as like the crocodile wrangler. Oh, so funny. She was known to like take out crocs that would try to take her kill. Yeah. And she was dominant over the males in the territory, and she would actually allow them to come and like spend more time with her on a kill. But that's not always the case because female mothers, especially first-time mothers, can be very nervous of letting their cubs around any male because they could be seen as competition. Same thing with polar bears. Right. Sometimes there is infanticide by males just because they're competition, even if they're their own. Right. So it's a risk for a mother, but she was very, very dominant. And so she lived to, I think, her late teens. And she had actually, as they get older, as cats do, their teeth started becoming decayed, and she had broken teeth, and through either hunting or just through decay, and so the rangers were actually helping her even in her older years. They were helping her like with supplemental feeding. She was also famous because she's the most photographed tigress in the world. Oh, she is. She is responsible for those national parks in India. That they're still there because she allowed herself to be photographed by people like Susie and came in and and let them come in and get insight into her life as a wild tigress with cubs. That's amazing. So they did this big, beautiful ceremony for her when she passed. She did eventually pass. That was beautiful with the Hindus. They put marigolds, they dressed her body, and they carried her out. And it was just like the most extraordinary thing that I saw. So it gives me chills. Yeah. So when I visited, she had already passed. And I think one of her, definitely somebody within her genetic line had taken over her territory, which I didn't see her that day, but it was an incredible experience. So I do try to get out into the field and, spend time with these projects and really understand. That's how I learn. I could study tigers here. I'd studied tigers for like 13 years, but getting out to Malaysia and actually like being in the jungle and understanding, so this is what it's like. These are really the challenges. This is what it's like to live here and be part of this ecosystem or live as a person near it. And being able to bring that back to all of our respective zoos and then share that with all of our visitors. And it's that's what it's about connecting. Like our mission at the zoo is, connecting people so that they're inspired to care and take action, conservation action. That's our mission. This is what we do. And I think that's great. I don't think a lot of people really understand the role of zoos with conservation, and that's why I wanted to talk to you too. So thanks, Marsha. I wanted that story to be heard too. But I think it's good. They need to hear what's also happening and all the work you're doing. Thank you. I mean, the role of modern zoos has changed so much. Changed from zoos, starting out as just a place that people could come see animals to, really turning into a big, conservation facility. It's, we don't, when we have money, we put it into renovating animal habitats, or, our opposition will often do a lot of marketing against us. But if we have money, we're going to put it toward our animals and conservation, and we won't spend that kind of money on marketing, and we do social media to get our stories out. But I think we do need to tell our story more, showing like, this is how you do an ultrasound on a pregnant snow leopard. Exactly. And we're starting to do that more, to be more, transparent, to show. I think people just don't know, people don't know what we do. And so our keeper talks are insight into that. And so we try to, every day we offer a lot of different keeper connection talks where people can come and learn all about our animals and learn about the individuals, and really get to meet one of our, bears, and then really care about bears in Montana. The first introduction to a lot of these kids. That's how we got started. Like a lot of people, got started. A lot of my good friends, we got started because we grew up going to Busch Gardens and seeing the white tigers, or going to SeaWorld and seeing the killer whales. Like, that's how we were inspired to get started in the field. And for a lot of us, it's really transformed into really, working in the field. And, that's what my graduate degree was like connecting all of it, because we all want the same things. We all want animals to thrive and have healthy ecosystems for everybody. Mm-hmm. And we all have a little bit different way about going and doing it, but that's why we need to have these conversations. Exactly. And we need to get the word out there more, what we're doing. And AZA is trying to help us in general with that. We do conferences, we share best practices, we, share locally, regionally, internationally, and we're trying to get all that information out to the public too. And like wildlife docs at Busch Gardens was such and the zoo, the Bronx, the zoo, the Wildlife Conservation Society show is really giving people they're coming
love
to
those
me.
shows. Yeah.
They're like, oh, the snow leopard had to do physical therapy. I was like, oh, we actually did that with ours. And they're like, you did, so it's I really commend them for doing that. And I love that we had that at Busch Gardens because, we worked with the Irwins on, Generation Nature.
Oh, nice.
It's really, it's all about collaborating.
And I think it's good for people to hear about your citizen scientist project.
Yes.
And I assume that's still going on.
It is, Thank you for bringing that up.
So people can get involved, and hands-on experience. Yeah.
It's great. And that is for everybody. Anybody can go help with that.
So you don't need to be a biologist or ecologist or...
It's the only project in the world you can go participate in conservation yourself. And I believe, citizen scientist work is the wave of the future. I mean, that's really going to be activating, engaging. And that's what Dr. Kai Kawanishi found is when she did her tiger research, she was also a University of Florida grad, and she was in Malaysia studying the tigers. And she helped form this alliance of all the people that were working together for tigers so that everyone was on the same page. So like WWF, WCS, Panthera, and she created this alliance, but she's like, there's so few people that, she's like, we have a few that are working really hard, and then we have a few, we have poachers that are coming in, but what about all the people in between? Let's activate all the people to really engage them. So that's when she started the Citizen Action for Tigers program. It's getting people, Malaysians, it's a developing country, getting people back into the jungle to reconnect, just like we're trying to initiate that here with kids, get off the video games and back into the parks so that they can, really connect with nature. And, technology is an amazing tool that we're using, like with camera traps and drones, and there's all sorts of new connections that, like through Wildlife Conservation Network, we're all collaborating, and they're working with a lot of the tech companies and to really integrate that. We are here too, like Crowd Optics has provided things for us, and
was it Zootopia or something too, where you can kind of get involved with the camera trap identification things. So
I mean, there's so many different ways, and I really believe that's the way of that we're going to need to move forward with conservation. So the Realm of the Tiger program is the next one's going to be in March of 2020, so next spring. And it's a 5-day, 4-night program. I was just promoting it here at WCN 2 weekends ago. And it's open to, the spots go fast. It's a small group, which keeps it intimate. And we, lead people on a immersive field program where you get to, like I mentioned before, camp with the indigenous tribe and really learn how they live and change out camera traps. And their presence in the forest is actually just reducing poaching because of, being there to patrol,
you're there.
Picking up snares. If there are any, fortunately, they've been able to ward off a lot.
Good.
And maintain that area. And it's, they focus on the corridors. So it's, you have these national parks that are scattered, and then it's all that connective forest in between, and then maintaining that connectivity. Kind of
so they stay
together. So
that
the animals can move. Because in India, like once you get to, having just small isolated national parks, you have to start translocating animal to keep the genetics flowing. It gets very complicated.
Well, we're dealing with that here too with certain species too.
Exactly.
So
you have to maintain those corridors. Like in Florida, the mountain or the Florida panthers, that's the biggest thing we can do, and it involves working with people, local landowners and private landowners, and so anyway, it gets very complicated. But there's citizen scientists. That's really, I think there's a big opportunity to increase our overall capacity for conservation, engaging not just students, cats, but just people that are generally interested in helping. They just don't know how.
Exactly.
Getting them involved. But yeah, I
Please
do have
do.
to mention, so we have a big day tomorrow. It is Earth Day today, but tomorrow is the very first International Palace's Cat Day.
Oh, it is.
So we
Are you celebrating here? Or
I will be
okay,
celebrating
okay.
here, but we are celebrating globally, all the way
I
from
didn't know
Russia,
about that.
Mongolia.
Okay.
And, they're a small cat that most people have never heard of. 34 out of the 41 wildcat species are small, and we started the Palace's Cat International Conservation Alliance because from the zoo side, because we wanted to provide efforts for the field conservation programs, because there's a lot about this cat we don't even know where their distribution is. And so last year we actually all met in Sweden in the third year of the project and created the first global conservation strategy for this cat that no one's ever heard of.
Oh, terrific.
But they're really important in the ecosystem. They live all where snow leopards live.
Okay.
So all those same Central Asian range countries, but they eat pikas. So
Right.
they eat pikas, so they help control the rodent populations and and other small mammals like lagomorphs, like pikas. But so we started PICA, the Palace's Cat International Conservation Alliance, from the zoo side to support, and we worked with IUCN and created this strategy. So tomorrow we are celebrating all about Palace's cats, and
Happy Palace's Cat Day.
We're very excited because they are,
Good.
kind of the original grumpy cat. They're very charismatic, but
I think I've seen a
don't
picture.
have a lot of awareness. We're
Yeah.
trying to raise awareness for like the small cats, like fishing cats, and
Yeah.
that not a lot of people know about.
They don't. Yeah, and I do
So-
want to talk about that more someday. Yeah.
Yeah, and we work with Urban Fishing Cat Project,
Yeah.
Anya and Ashan, and
Okay.
they're doing wonderful work with the cats in Sri Lanka. And so it's, there's a lot of really good work, and that's what keeps me inspired.
Yeah.
I am inspired by the people out in the field risking their lives every day to protect these animals, like my best friend Lydia that's in Kenya working with elephants, and Amy Dickman in Ruaha and Kai in Malaysia. And, they're the ones that, when I need to draw inspiration, I think about them, and I'm like, they've left all the comforts of home.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky I get to live here and do this.
Yeah.
They really left everything, their families and friends.
But did
to
they
go
really
do
give up
it.
anything for what they're doing? I mean,
No, not at all. It's so rewarding.
Yeah.
So that's why it's, I'm hoping that this next project, I'd like to be able to help in a bigger capacity in the field, because I think I have the energy for it. And,
you do.
But to tie it all in, because the zoo side, like we want this, modern zoos want to get more involved in projects like that.
Yeah.
It's just resources are limited, and it takes, we've got to focus on our individuals here. So it's, it's funding is always a challenge. It's the biggest challenge, just splitting the funding up between all the different wildlife conservation groups, because it's all important.
Yeah. So that's another way people can help as well.
Yes,
If they can't get out
absolutely.
to do certain things, they can help with funding and donating and somehow. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's there's so many, it's Earth Day. It's like just get involved somehow, pick what you like and you're passionate about, and just learn more about it and find out how you can contribute. I really believe, we all have our own individual role and contribution. And so, I'm very inspired by the younger generation too, seeing what the kids are learning at our camps. I'm very impressed. There was like a 5-year-old that was telling me about just rhino protection, and I was just like, wow,
good for you.
Really impressed. So we have
young.
Education is such a huge part of what we do, and so I'm very inspired by my colleagues and
well, you're
all the
answering
people
my
in the
last
field.
question. What gives you hope? But
by
inspiration.
Colleagues. The animals, the drive. I'm driven by the passion for the individuals and the animals that I've gotten to know and loved and had the privilege to care for. But what inspires me is the people that are out in the field that have left the comforts, to really, make the best impact that they can. And so there's a lot of inspiration out in the world. It can be tough because it's, you hear half of all you hear, we don't hear it.
In 20 years, we're going to lose so much of our wildlife.
They are publishing this information that's, we may lose half of all the biodiversity, in the next 50 to 100 years, which is terrifying. So it is a race against time, but I love, Amy Dickman says this best, she says, it's not a time for despair, it's a time for action. Yeah. And I love that because it truly, we don't have time, we need to figure out the best solutions for climate change, for, preserving biodiversity, for, we need to engage more people. So, because I think a lot of people, but they're not apathetic. They do want to help. They just don't know how.
Right. Well, they see the news. It's so, like you said, it's disparaging. They see it. They're like, how can I help that? I can't help save the wildlife by 2020 or whatever, 2050 or whatever it is, so.
And it's like, we just have to do something.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be big. It can be sharing a story. It can be taking a photograph. Sure.
Like, I'll never forget, like, at the WCN Expo a couple years ago, I was working with Dr. Colleen Begg from NASA Lions, and she just, she does her presentations, and she's, the passion is just exuding, and everyone in the room is just on the verge of, just like crying because it's just so amazing.
You just want to go up and hug her.
Yeah, she lives in the field with her family.
And her kids,
she's raised her kids in the bush. I mean, you're just like, this woman is like the most dedicated woman I've ever met.
Yeah.
And I never forget, I went up to her afterwards, and I was just like, and she was exhausted, and I just said, I was like, I just want to do more. And she looks at me and she goes, we all do.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
How can you say that?
For Colleen to say that when she's given up. And it really struck a chord with me. I was like, wow, for her to say that. It's like, and that's what made me realize it's like we all have these unique talents that we can offer, and we can't be hard on ourselves. I think a lot of people in my field, we get a lot of bad press, and it's a lot of people just don't understand the full picture of what we do. And we get down about it. It's hard not to. And, I just thanked my team this morning. I said, I was just like, thank you for making a difference. Thank you for being
Good for
here.
You. Yeah.
We all, we all should be kinder to ourselves and recognize that, we're doing the best we can.
Thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio. Links and resources to today's topic are in our show notes on iTunes. We appreciate your dedication and interest in protecting our natural world for future generations. If you like what you heard, please get involved by volunteering, donating, and sharing these podcasts with your friends. It also helps us to inform more people if you take a minute to leave a rating or review on iTunes. Have a great day, and thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio.